They asked her the same question 4 times. 2 of them were police. One was a man from a laboratory who kept turning a glass bottle over in his hands like it might open by itself. The 4th was a lawyer, and he asked it more carefully than the others, which somehow made it worse. "How did you know?" Kemi Adesanya sat with her hands flat on the table and told them the truth, and the truth was so small that none of them wrote it down properly. She had tasted the sesame oil. That was it. That was the whole thing. A woman put a drop of oil on the back of a spoon at 6:30 in the morning. She had done it every morning for 6 months, and something at the end of it was not bitter enough. 9 seconds later, the tip of her tongue went very faintly numb. 9 seconds. That was the margin. That was all that stood between Lim Do-jin and a death certificate that would have said heart failure and been signed by a doctor who had no reason to look any closer. But you have to understand how she got to that morning, because the tasting is not the story. The tasting took 9 seconds, the rest took 6 months. 6 months earlier, Lim Do-jin had not eaten a proper meal in front of another human being in over a year. He ran the freight lines and the docks, and a great deal that never appeared on paper. And there were men in that city who lowered their eyes when he passed. And he lived on sealed protein drinks he mixed himself, because somebody had once put something in his food, and he had very nearly not come back from it. 6 chefs had tried, all 6 had left. Then a woman was hired to mop the 2nd floor. Nobody in that house expected anything of Kemi Adesanya. They looked at her and drew the same 3 conclusions people had been drawing off her body since she was 14. Not one of those 3 things was true. What was true was that she had been cooking since she was 9 years old, for 4 younger brothers, in a kitchen where you could not afford to be wrong about what was in the pot. She never measured anything, she tasted. By that morning, 6 months later, Lim Do-jin ate everything she put in front of him without hesitating. That was not the happy ending. That was the thing somebody was about to try to take away. 2 questions sit under all of it. Who walks into a house that careful and gets past every lock, every camera, and every man with a gun? And what does a man like Lim Do-jin do when he finds out the only reason he is still breathing is a woman his whole household had decided not to look at? It starts on the day she was hired to clean. 6 months earlier, on a Tuesday, Kemi Adesanya was given a mop on the 2nd floor. "You will not go to the 3rd, the house manager said. "You will not speak to Mr. Lim unless he speaks first. You will not discuss anything in this house outside it." Understood. Questions. Kemi looked down the corridor. Marble glass and a smell she could not place, which turned out to be the smell of a building where nobody had cooked anything in a very long time. "Where is the kitchen?" The manager blinked. "You are not assigned to the kitchen." "I know," Kemi said. "I just like to know where it is." She found it on her 4th day and stood in the doorway for a while. It was enormous and it was dead. Everything in it was good, and none of it had been used. On a shelf near the door sat a row of sealed cartons, 12 of them, the kind of nutritional supplement they give people in hospitals who cannot swallow. An old man was sitting at the end of the counter with a cup of barley tea. "You are the new one," he said. "Kemi, Pyomangil," he did not get up. "Do not touch the shelf. I was not going to." Everybody looks at the shelf. Kemi came in properly and looked around at the good stove that had never been lit, and the copper pans that had never been scratched. "Nobody cooks here. Somebody used to," Pio said. 6 of them. They lasted between 9 days and 5 weeks. "What happened to the food?" "He looked at it," Pio said. "Every night. He said thank you. He did not eat it." Kemi took that in. "And you?" The old man turned his cup a quarter turn on the counter. "I taste," he said. 32 years. I eat first, I wait 20 minutes, I nod. That is my whole job." A small dry sound that was not a laugh. It used to matter. She was not planning anything. She wants that on the record, because everybody afterward assumed she had a plan. What happened was that it rained for 4 days. On the 4th day, her shift ran late. She came down at 9 in the evening to fill her water bottle, and found a refrigerator full of good food that nobody was going to touch. Beef, onions, a whole head of garlic. Someone was still ordering for a chef who had stopped coming. She stood there for a long moment. Then she took off her jacket. She cooked the way she had cooked since she was 9 years old, which was without a recipe and without a single measuring spoon, tasting at every stage, adjusting, tasting again. Her grandmother had taught her the only rule that mattered. You do not cook what the paper says. You cook what the pot tells you. At 10:30, a man appeared in the doorway. He was tall and hollowed out, and he was wearing a dark sweater and no shoes, and he looked at the stove like it had personally ambushed him. "What is that?" "Stew," Kemi said. "I used your food. I will pay for it out of my wages." "That is not what I asked." "I know." She wiped her hands. "But it is what you are going to worry about later, so I thought I would deal with it now." Lim Do-jin stood in the doorway of his own kitchen and did not move. "I am not going to tell you it is safe," Kemi said. "I do not know what happened to you, and I am not going to pretend. What I can tell you is that I made it. I opened everything myself, and nobody has been in this room but me." She took a bowl down from the shelf, "And I am going to eat some right now in front of you, out of the same pot." She filled her own bowl. She picked up a spoon. She ate. She did not perform it. She ate the way she always ate, with the plain attention of a woman who genuinely likes food and has no complicated feelings about that fact. He watched her for a long time. Then he came in, and he sat down, and he picked up the spoon she had set out. His hand was not steady. She did not look at it. "Take your time," she said to the pot, rather than to him. 6 months later, this was the shape of a morning in that house. Kemi in the kitchen at 6, Pio at the end of the counter at 10 past, with his barley tea. Do-jin at 1/2 in a suit at the island, eating a full plate without any negotiation at all. Nobody in the household ever named what had happened. They simply reorganized around it. And every morning, before anything went in front of Do-jin, Pyo-man-gil tasted first, waited, and nodded. On a Thursday in the 6th month, he nodded exactly the way he always did. And Kemi, wiping down the board, watching him out of the side of her eye, understood with a small cold drop in her stomach that the old man had just lied to her. She said nothing about it for 2 days, because she was not certain, and because being wrong about a man like Pyo-man-gil would cost him everything. Meanwhile, the rest of it went on. Do-jin had started staying in the kitchen after he finished. There was no reason for it. Had a study, and a company, and 11 people who wanted his attention before 9 in the morning. He stayed anyway. "You are going to be late," Kemi said. "I am the reason meetings start. That is a very convenient way to be a person." He almost smiled. He had a whole vocabulary of almost smiling, and she had learned to read most of it. "What is that?" "Igusi, my mother's, not my grandmother's. They disagreed about it for 30 years and never resolved it." "Which one was right, my grandmother?" Kemi said obviously. "But my mother is alive, so hers is the one I make." He laughed. It was short and surprised, and he seemed slightly annoyed by it, which she found delightful and did not say. On the Saturday she tasted the oil. It was nothing. It was the smallest thing in the world. She put a drop of sesame oil on the back of a spoon the way she did every single morning, because a good oil tells you what kind of day the food is going to have. The bitterness at the end of it was not there. Not gone, just less, a shade less, the way a note is flat rather than absent. She stood very still in the middle of that kitchen. Then she did it again. 9 seconds after the second taste, the tip of her tongue went faintly, unmistakably numb. Kemi Adesanya did not scream, and she did not run, and she did not go and find a man with a gun. She poured the oil down the drain. She rinsed the bottle and put it in her apron pocket. She opened a new one from the back of the cupboard, tasted it, found it correct, and cooked the entire breakfast again from the beginning. Then she carried a plate out to a man who was reading something on his phone, and she smiled at him. And she went back into the kitchen and put both hands on the counter and breathed. At 6:10, Pyo-man-gil came in with his barley tea. "Sit down," Kemi said. The old man stopped in the doorway. Something in his face moved. "You are going to ask me something." "I am." He sat. He put the cup down and folded his liver-spotted hands and waited upright, the way men of that generation wait for bad news. "How long has your sense of taste been gone?" The kitchen was very quiet. 2 years, he said. Kemi closed her eyes for a second. "I can taste salt," Pio said. "A little, sweet sometimes, nothing else, not bitter, not sour, not anything wrong." He turned the cup a quarter turn on the counter, which she had learned meant he was steadying himself. "I have been nodding at food I cannot taste for 2 years. Why? Because I am 74 years old, and this is what I am." He said it without self-pity, as a fact about the world. There is nothing after this. There is a room and a pension, and a very long time. You could have been killing him every morning. Yes. He met her eyes, and I knew that, and I told myself it did not matter, because nothing was ever wrong and nothing was ever going to be wrong. He paused. You are the reason nobody has died yet. You have been tasting everything anyway. I have watched you do it every morning for 6 months, and I have said nothing, because as long as you were doing it, I was still allowed to be here. Kemi looked at the old man for a long moment. Then she took the bottle out of her apron and set it on the counter between them. Something was wrong this morning, she said. Pio looked at the bottle. He did not touch it. Then we are past the part where I matter, he said. Tell me what you need. They went to the pantry together and pulled every bottle of sesame oil in the house. 3 of them, all from the same lot number. Kemi turned one over and found the supplier label on the base. And it was not the supplier that had been on the base of every bottle in that house for the previous 2 years. The change had been made 4 weeks ago. If you are still with me down here, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. Now let me show you what she did with 3 days and nobody she could tell. She told Do-jin that night in the kitchen, with the door shut. She laid it out the way she would explain a recipe. The bitterness, the 9 seconds, the 3 bottles, the lot number, the supplier that had changed 4 weeks ago. He listened without interrupting once. When she finished, he said, "You are sure?" "No," Kemi said. "I am sure something is wrong with the oil. I am not a laboratory. I am a woman with a tongue. Your tongue is the reason I eat. That is not evidence." "It is to me," Do-jin said, and that was the whole of it. 6 months of mornings, and he did not ask her to prove it. And he did not send for a second opinion. And something in Kemi's chest turned over quietly at how fast he had done that. Then he said, "Give me the bottle. What are you going to do? Send it out quietly, to someone who owes me something and does not know your name. And in the meantime," Do-jin said, "nothing changes, not one thing. If whoever did this sees a single door lock differently, they will be gone by Thursday and we will never find them." Kemi absorbed that, "So I keep cooking. You keep cooking and you keep eating." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "You understand what you are asking me to do." "I do. Say it then." Do-jin was quiet for a moment. "I am asking you to put a plate in front of me every morning for 3 days," he said. "And to smile at the man who did this while he walks through your kitchen. And to say nothing to anybody. I am aware of what that is. I would not ask it of most people. You are asking it of me. Because you are the only person in this house who would notice if it happened again." Those were the longest 3 days of her life. Cook a normal breakfast in a normal kitchen. Smile at the delivery. Say good morning, and do all of it knowing that something in the room wants to kill the man you have started, without deciding to think about at night. She did it anyway. She laughed at things. She burnt a pan on the 2nd day on purpose, because she had never once burnt a pan, and somebody paying attention would notice a woman who had suddenly become careful. "You burnt something," Do-jin said. "I did. You have never burnt anything, which is exactly why I did it." She scraped the pan into the bin without looking up. "Eat your breakfast, Kemi. Eat your breakfast, Do-jin." And on the 2nd afternoon, standing at the counter with a delivery list in her hand, she worked out how to find him. It was not complicated. That was what she liked about it. Every ingredient that entered that house came through one man with a tablet. Change the shape of what she asked for. Tell nobody. If something arrived 4 days later that was wrong in the same way, then whoever touched it had touched it after the order, which meant inside the house. So she rewrote the week's menu. She put in an order for 2 things she had never used in 6 months. Perilla oil and a brand of doenjang from a maker on the East Coast that nobody in Seoul buys. And she waited. Oh Hyun-woo was 39 years old and had run procurement for the estate for 2 years, and he was the single most forgettable man in the building. He arrived with the delivery on the Wednesday. Side-parted hair, plain grey jacket, tablet in hand, apologizing for the traffic. "The perilla oil is here," he said. "The paste took longer. Small maker. They only ship on Mondays." "Thank you," Kemi said. "It is unusual." He said it lightly, checking something on the tablet. "Nobody has asked for that brand before. I felt like a change." "Of course," the helpful smile. "Anything else you want, you tell me. I will find it." He left. Kemi stood in the kitchen with a box of things she had ordered 4 days ago and had told absolutely nobody about. That evening she said it out loud to Pio, once very quietly, while he pretended to sort a folder. He knew what was in the order. Everybody sees the order. No, Kemi said. Everybody sees the delivery. One person sees the order 4 days early. Pio turned his cup a quarter turn on the counter and did not look up. Then we know, he said. That night, the laboratory result came back to Do-jin's phone, and he came down to the kitchen at 11:30 and stood in the doorway and did not say anything for a while. How bad, Kemi said. It is not a dose. What does that mean? It means nobody was trying to kill me on a Tuesday, Do-jin said. The concentration is very low, low enough that one meal does nothing, low enough that 100 meals do something you cannot reverse. He set the phone down on the counter. Weeks, months. Heart function goes slowly in a man who is already underweight and has a documented history of not eating properly. Kemi sat down on the stool. They were not going to poison you, she said. No. They were going to give you a medical history. Yes, Do-jin said. And a doctor would have signed it, and my own men would have carried the coffin. And not one person in this city would ever have asked a single question. They did not kick a door down. It took 11 hours and it was done with paper. The lot numbers on the 3 bottles matched a consignment that had entered the estate through a supplier registered 4 weeks earlier to a company with one director. The company had been paid twice. Both payments came from an account that had also, in March, paid the deposit on a car currently parked in a space assigned to the procurement office. The warehouse camera had Oh Hyun-woo alone, with the consignment for 19 minutes on a Sunday when the building was empty. Nobody laid a hand on him. He was called into a room with 5 people in it and shown 8 sheets of paper in order. And by the 4th sheet the helpful smile had come off his face and had not found anywhere else to go. You had a very good idea, Do-jin told him. His voice did not rise once. You worked out that everybody in this house watches the doors and the men and the cars, and nobody watches the boxes. He turned another page. You were right. For 4 weeks you were completely right. Hyun-woo said nothing. Why? And the answer when it came was so ordinary that it was worse than anything else he could have said. Because they offered me money, Hyun-woo said. And because nobody ever looks at the man who carries the box. Everything went to the prosecutors with him. All 8 sheets, the camera file, the account tracing, the bottles complete. There was one conversation left in the house that mattered, and it was not that one. Do-jin found Pyo Man-gil in the kitchen the next morning at 6:10, in his usual seat, with his barley tea, in a cardigan buttoned to the throat, waiting to be dismissed. The old man stood up when he came in. Sit down, Mr. Pyo. I would rather stand for this. Sit down, anyway. Pyo sat. 2 years, Do-jin said. Yes, you should have told me, yes. Why did you not? The old man looked at his hands. Because I have done one thing since I was 42, he said. And I am not good at anything else, and there is nobody at home. And this kitchen is where I have had my tea every morning for 32 years. He lifted his chin slightly. That is not an excuse, it is only the reason. Do-jin was quiet for a moment. Miss Adesanya says you covered for her for 6 months. Pyo looked up. She said what? She said you watched her taste everything every morning, and you never once told anyone that she was doing your job. Do-jin pulled out the stool opposite him and sat down, which Pyo had never in 32 years seen him do in that room. She says the 2 of you have been running this kitchen together since February and nobody noticed. The old man's mouth moved and nothing came out of it. You are not being dismissed, Do-jin said. You are being reassigned. You know every supplier this family has used since my father was alive. You know which ones changed hands and when. Starting Monday, nothing enters this house that you have not signed for. I cannot taste it. I am not asking you to taste it, Do-jin said. I am asking you to remember. That has never been the part that failed. Pyo Man-gil sat in a kitchen he had expected to be walked out of, and put both hands flat on the counter and did not trust himself to speak for a while. Then he said, the barley tea stays, the barley tea stays. They asked Kemi the same question 4 times, 2 police, a man from the laboratory, and a lawyer who asked it more carefully than the others. How did you know? And she told them, and they wrote down almost none of it, 'cause what she said did not sound like anything. The bitterness at the end of the oil was less than it should have been, and 9 seconds after I tasted it, the tip of my tongue went numb. The lawyer looked up from his pad. That is what you are basing this on. That is what I am basing it on. 9 seconds of numbness. Yes, Kemi said. That is all it was. None of them understood that the sentence contained her entire life. 4 brothers. A kitchen in Peckham, with a stove that only lit on the 3rd try. A woman standing over a pot at 11 years old, knowing exactly what was in it, because being wrong meant nobody ate. They thanked her. They packed up their bottle and their pad and went away. Do-jin came into the kitchen that evening while she was closing it. He did not say thank you. She had noticed a long time ago that he never used that phrase for anything that actually mattered, and she had decided she liked that about him. He said, "I have a problem. Go on. I am not going to eat anything you have not made." Kemi, put down the cloth. That is not a problem. That is a staffing arrangement. I am aware of how it sounds. He was standing very straight, in the way he stood when he was not performing authority, but simply had not worked out what else to do with his body. It is also not what I meant, and I think you know that, and I am doing it very badly. You are? Then help me. Kemi crossed the kitchen. Do-jin, she said, 6 months ago you could not swallow food in front of another person. Now you eat everything I put down without looking at it. You did not do that because I am a good cook. She stopped in front of him. You did that because it was me. You worked that out ages ago. You have just been hoping somebody else would say it out loud first. Yes, he said. Well, somebody has. He reached up and put his hand against the side of her face, and she leaned into it, and neither of them said anything clever, because it was not that kind of moment and both of them knew it. The next morning at 6:30, Kemi Adesanya put a bowl down on the island. Pioman Gill was at the end of the counter with his tea and a delivery folder. Outside, the light was coming up grey over the river. Lim Do-jin picked up the spoon. He did not ask what was in it. He never asked again. Before you go, here is what I want to know. Who in your life notices the thing nobody else does? Tell me down below.